My name is Lucy Tobias, and I actually lead our emerging talent team at Dropbox, but I'm helping out our friends here at Figma. Before we get started, for those that haven't added their name, location, and what their fashion trend they'd bring back, please add that in the chat. A couple housekeeping items before we get started. If you could make sure that you're muted for now, there'll be time for Q&A at the end of the session. And if you have any questions, comments, thoughts throughout the presentation, feel free to drop it in the chat and we'll address those either async or during the Q&A section. And then a reminder that this is supposed to be interactive, so don't be shy. We're all here to learn, and feel free to engage however you feel is appropriate for you. And this is a recorded session, so we'll make sure to have this on the Talent Board website at the end. But that's all of my notes for now. I'll follow up at the end of the session with our winner. But for now, I'll hand it over to Isaac. Isaac, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Lucy. Hello, everyone. My name is Isaac, and I am an early career recruiter over at Figma. And super excited to be with you all today for this conversation around the technical interview process. And before I move on, I do want to give a special shout out to my friend and colleague Langston, who is also on the line. He's a new grad over at Figma. He's been with us now a little over a year. And so he's on the line with me because I'm going to be going over a lot of content, but I know you all will have a lot of super heavy technical questions that I will most likely not be able to answer. But Langston is definitely here to share a lot of his expertise around any of those areas that you all might have questions on today. So definitely want to give him, and Langston, actually, if you want to come off chat and just quickly intro yourself real quickly, I would love to give you that opportunity.
Yeah, hi, I'm Langston. I'm a software engineer here at Figma. Like Isaac said, I've been here for a little bit over a year. I didn't intern at Figma, so I did go through like the full new grad interview experience. Both during my time in college, I also did a lot of other interviews at other companies. So happy to like share anything I've learned from that. But yeah, happy to answer any questions at the end during Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that introduction, Langston. Cool. So let's hop into an introduction or agenda, excuse me. So what am I going to be talking about today? First, I'm going to give you all a quick intro to Figma, talking about some key milestones of our company, our values, things of that nature. Give you all some insight into what our 2023 interview process will look like, specifically for SWE. And then I'm also going to walk you all through a particular framework that you all can use when it comes to interviewing, hopefully at Figma or in the industry, and also talking to you all through basic algorithms, data structures, as well as clean code testing. And of course, we'll have time for Q&A and things of those natures at the end. Cool. So an intro to Figma. At Figma, our vision is to make design accessible to all. So here are some key milestone dates for our company. In 2012, we were founded. In 2015, Figma 1.0 goes live. That same year, we also raised $14 million in Series A funding. In 2018, our first paid product is released. In 2019, the Figma community is launched. In 2020, our first Config, which is our big company conference where we release different updates and the whole Figma community comes together. The first conference was held in 2020. That same year, we also raised another round of funding of 50 million, Series D. 2021, Big Jam is launched. We raised 200 million in Series E funding. And this year we opened several offices in Paris, Berlin, and Tokyo. So lots of exciting things going on here at Figma. So let me just give you all some insight into what are our values here at Figma. When I was looking for roles and I was interviewing, these were the things that drew me in to wanting to work at Figma. So number one, building community. We're multiplayer people and we love the weird, wonderful magic that happens when humans connect. We bring people together so they can bring new ideas to life. Run with it. When you see something that needs doing, do it. When you have a great idea, run with it. Tackle big, scary, exciting challenges like Figma's future depends on it, because it does. Love your craft. We build for builders and try to make complex things feel simple. In our products and process, we invest in the details few people see, but everyone feels. And grow as you go, which is my personal favorite value. Everyone's a work in progress, and we're here to help each other grow. So along with love, we share the direct feedback. We all need to become great and do what we do. Cool. So now I want to give you all a little insight into the 2023 Sweet Intern and New Grad interview process. So just want to give you all a little bit of our philosophy on the interview process. So the interview process is focused on CS fundamentals and data structures with an emphasis on problem solving, communication, and the ability to take feedback and improve in your interview. Cool. So how is the interviews broken up? So the initial stage is to take a whiteboard assessment. This is a 110-minute assessment that you can complete when it's most convenient for you. We chose to use whiteboard as their test effectively evaluates on-the-job skills in the most inclusive way. The coding interviews, and then the next phase of the process will be the virtual on-site / final round of interviews. And so it'll be 2 coding interviews, both which are 60 minutes each. These interviews are language agnostic, centered around CS fundamentals, focused on data structures and algorithms. You'll also go through a values interview. This is a non-technical interview with an engineering manager focused on your motivations, priorities, and it's a great chance for you to ask questions about Figma. You can almost think of this as the traditional behavioral interviews. So that is pretty much how the interview process would work for anyone that wants to apply to Figma for any intern or new grad suite roles this coming fall. Cool. So now I want to walk you all through a particular framework that you all can use while you're interviewing, whether it be hopefully here at Figma or even in the industry alike. So CCTM, collaboration, communication, and time management. So let's dive deeper into the collaboration component. Number 1, understand your interviewer's role. At Figma, our interviewers will be more like collaborators than silent evaluators, but this might not be the case for all companies. Use your interviewer. They're here to help you. Make sure you have the context you need throughout the whole interview. Communicate before coding, whether it be verbally, through inline clients, Persuado code, or even a whiteboarding tool. Ensure that you and your interviewer are on the same page before putting ideas to code. Ask questions. If you're stuck, don't be afraid to ask for a hint. It's best to make continuous progress throughout the interview than to have a sudden breakthrough. Code out loud. As you're implementing your solution, vocalize your thoughts. This ensures your interviewer can follow along your logic throughout the interview. Also, feel free to pause in your interviews to collect your thoughts. As you're thinking about next what to do, you're welcome to tell your interview something like, let me take a few seconds to think about the next steps before explaining out loud, rather than trying to fill up silence by talking. Next, time management. Number 1, know your tools. So get comfortable with the syntax and standard library of the language you're interviewing in. You want to be focused on the interview problem, not programming mechanics. Test early and often. Try to find natural intermediate checkpoints where you can validate your code is working. It's faster to implement than to debug. Lastly, plan first before executing. Words are easier to change than beautifully indented lines of code. Ensuring you have a solid approach before coding can make the interview go much smoother. Lastly, on this point of CCTM, don't fret. Oh gosh, I didn't get through all the parts. Different coding problems have different number of parts, difficulty ramp up, etc. It may just be the nature of the problem and expectations are adjusted accordingly. I had to use a hint to get the solution. There are lots of opportunities to show positive signal in an interview. Getting a hint doesn't invalidate all of the other great work that you have done. Awesome. So switching gears, now I'm going to walk you all through a little bit about basic algorithms and data structures and how that applies during the interview process. So cool. Before the interview, how much leak code? Or how much should I leak code? Practice does help as you learn how to plan solutions and translate them to code, but you don't need to memorize every question or trick. Speed isn't always as versatile as understanding your tools and problem solving. Is it size or length? We all forget exact wording sometimes. It's most important to describe what you're trying to do. Cool. Next, during the interview, operations. What does your data structure need to do? Examples, look up information, insert/delete elements, find a minimum or maximum value. For each operation, 1, runtime. What order of magnitude of time will your code take to run? If slow, can you speed it up? Maybe via sorting, tree balancing to minimize tree depth, or pre-computing. Lastly, memory. How many things are you storing? Which data structures? Arrays, they are so common. For example, strings are totally arrays under the hood. Hash tables and trees. Keep hash tables and trees top of mind as they're widely used in the interview process. Know the benefits know the benefits, trade-offs to each of these clearly. Multiple solutions. If multiple ideas for solutions come to mind, you can talk through the complexity of each and ask your interviewer which one they'd like to see you implement. Trade-offs. Just like the real world, every solution will have trade-offs. Ask your interview what your constraints are, if there are any, and what you're optimizing for. Keep in mind, you may want to pre-compute things like sorting as a trade-off to runtime. Cool. Now we're going to move into some clean code testing. So, tips for writing clean code. It should be meaningful and concise, function names. Write comments as necessary. Write helpful functions as, use white space to help with formatting. Follow the single responsibility principle. Review and update your code as you go, and write unit tests. So what does clean code exactly mean? It's readable, easy to understand, clear, and simple. Why? Clean code is easy to understand, to maintain, and to change. Important in both interviews and in the real world. Help us help you. Clean code helps you and your interviewer get on the same page faster. Next, be proactive. Lay out some test case in writing with your interviewer to make sure that you have the correct understanding of the problem. Think about the edge cases clearly. Don't wait until you're done writing your solution. Edge cases, zeros, empty strings, empty arrays, etc. Arrays with one element. Think of any constraints in your problem. Think of invariants in your code. And that is it. Now, we're going to dive into some Q&A, but first, want to let y'all know that our 2022 roles will be opening up on August 15th. We'll be hiring for software engineer interns as well as new grads. So you can definitely check out the Early Careers website For more context on the roles that we'll be hiring for in the fall, like I said, we open up on August 15th. And so what can you expect being an intern or a new grad at Figma? Number one, support. So you'll receive an assigned mentor and manager, along with a support team to guide you professionally and personally. Number two, you'll also receive mentorship. A member of your team will be dedicated to ensuring your success through consistent feedback, one-on-ones, and performance evaluations. Lastly, ownership. You will be fully embedded onto a team and assigned work that your peers are asking alongside you. Your work will be aligned with impact. And then here are just some cool activities that you might partake in as a new grad or intern at Figma. So Q&A with leadership, Tech Talk Thursdays, cooking classes, and a variety of other events. But with that, feel free to ask away. You can drop your questions, whether it be into the chat, come off mute. Like I said, if you have some serious technical questions, Langston is definitely here to provide some expertise. If you have questions on the interview process, Figma, things of that nature, I'm also here as well as a resource, but happy to dive into some questions now. I believe your name is Saad. I see your hand up. Yeah.
Yeah, hi, hello. Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Perfect. First of all, thank you very much, Isaac, for the talk. Very insightful. I have two questions, please, if I may. The first is regarding the last point you mentioned, always to test while you're in the interview. Do you mean like because in the interview, usually, like you mentioned, you're writing on a whiteboard or a quarter pad or something. Is the interviewer expecting the interviewee to write unit tests on that quarter pad, or is it more of like coming up with the edge cases that they need to test for? That's the first part of the question. And the second question would be how much would the expectations from the interviewee differ if the role they're interviewing for is more of a senior role or not a junior or entry level role? And thank you very much.
Sure.
Yeah, I think I can answer. Sorry, the first part was about, actually, yeah, could you say the first part again?
Yeah, are you expected to write unit tests in your quarter pad?
Okay. Yeah, so for the most part, I think with maybe all of the questions we ask, I have to verify that, but I think we do have some tests given. And mainly as an interviewer, what we would want to see is that like that you, the candidate, is able to come up with like tests, more tests for like edge cases, things like that. The tests we give you initially aren't going to be, they're not going to like cover all cases. So it's more so to just make sure that you can think through like different edge cases, or kind of look at our tests and kind of see what we are missing. Yeah. And then the second part was about how we judge candidates between like junior versus senior in terms of like interview performance.
Yeah, in terms of like technical interview, how would the expectations differ?
Yeah, so I think we're asking like the same sort of questions between both. I think definitely based on like the discussions I've observed in terms of hiring and things like that, like a more senior candidate, you would definitely expect to like not necessarily need as much hinting or be able to like reason about the question a little bit like deeper. I think more so for like new grads, interns, things like that. It's definitely expected that, you know, they may get stuck at some point, and that's not necessarily viewed as like a super negative thing. I think you're more judging them on like you're judging them on the same skills, but definitely for a more senior person, like you'd want to see them be able to like work through problems maybe quicker, or just be able to like go deeper, like independently. So I hope that like kind of answers some of that.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Isaac, it looks like you have some questions in the chat.
In the chat, cool. Having a little, let's see. Oh, cool. Okay, perfect. Let me actually. Okay, cool. Let's see. I'm looking through the chats here. 1 second. Cool. So someone says, when does roles open for 2023? So roles go live on August 15th. As for product interns, are you referring to like product management or product design? So we will be hiring for product research. Can't specifically say for product design, but I know we're not doing any product management though. I can certainly say that. Let's see. Cool. And then are there in-person, hybrid, or remote? So for the most part, we are currently operating on sort of a hybrid schedule. It also really depends on the team that you're working on. So we do have some interns that are like going in office, but currently like the expectation is there is no set in stone expectation that you'll like be expected to go to the office. But that's also something you can work out with your mentor and manager if it makes sense for you to go in the office more on certain days. But that's totally a conversation that we're allowing interns to work out with their particular mentors and managers. Maybe we go back to the previous page of opening roles. Sure. Do you recruit front-end interns or just so we hire our interns as generalists. So yeah, feel free to apply. As long as you fall within like full stack, front and back end, feel free to apply. And then we can go from there.
So I have a quick question. It was like from a past experience, I was solving a lead code question, and in that particular problem, I couldn't solve that. So I just searched for the video on YouTube and for the explanation, and there was a solution. I tried it by myself, and I tried to change the person used set in Python. It used set for the data structures, and I tried to change it a bit, and I used the list instead of that. And suddenly the same solution gave me the, I guess, memory or time exceed issues. And when I turned it back to set, it runs smoothly. So like now my question is like, how do we like judge that by looking at the issue, or what should we do when we are solving an issue? I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, so this is more around like determining which data structures to use. It seems like it sounds like specifically related to like performance. So
Yeah,
I mean, sorry.
Yeah, so sorry to cut you off. Like, yeah, my question is like, the problem will be solved by any data structures, right?
Yeah.
If our logic is correct. It's just the time and memory exceed issues which really cost us at the end. Like, even though we are solving the problem correctly and we are testing it at each particular stage, at the end when it goes with by testing all the test cases, it suddenly shows the time and memory exceeds, which actually
Yeah.
disappoints us at the end. Sorry for taking that long.
Yeah, so I mean, I think for the most part, like these are things you have to consider. I think like planning early and asking questions early really helps with this. I think like as an interviewer, at least if like a candidate brings up using a certain data structure early on, and I know that like maybe later you'll run into a performance issue, like specifically between like a list and a set, maybe. I think like for the most part, your interviewer will kind of like they can sort of hint you towards these things. They'll like maybe bring up like how does like this current implementation impact memory usage or something like that. But yeah, that is like definitely memory usage, along with like how fast code's running does matter. It doesn't necessarily, it's not necessarily always the most important thing, but something like that, where like maybe you have a lot of like duplicate data and like you would benefit from using a set. That is something that like as an interviewer you would expect like someone to be able to reason about, and like maybe even after hinting or something, that you'd expect them to be able to like talk through and realize why they should use one or the over the other. So yeah, it's definitely, I would just bring that up early in terms of your planning, before you like dive in implementing. Or if you do run into that later, be able to like quickly debug that issue and switch data structure.
Got that. So you mean to just, like look for the hint from the interviewer, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely not just that like the interviewer will hint you towards it, but it's like, no, it is something you should consider with every problem. I think performance does matter. Um, and so keeping something like memory top of mind is important. I know for our questions where like memory does like really matter, it's definitely like kind of brought up sort of in the question. Or if we do notice like someone going down the wrong path in terms of a data structure, and we do kind of like hint towards another, or at least bring up performance to them and like see if they can reason about it for themselves. So definitely something that is important.
Great, thank you. Appreciate it.
Cool. I see we have some folks helping out in the chat. Are there any folks that want to come off mute or anything to ask some questions?
Yeah, I see someone asks about like what the best way to ask for a hint is if you're stuck in an interview. So I think being able to talk through how you're stuck is going to be like the most important. Um, as an interview, it's really tough if someone's like not really saying much about how they like what they're thinking, what their thought process is, to know like how to hint them in a way that is helpful, without kind of like just revealing all the problem, which would like is not really a great thing to have in an interview. I think we want to see like how they can take hints, on like with their current implementation, and if they can like take those hints, reason about it, and work towards the correct solution. So I think it's going to be really important to like talk through exactly what you're stuck on, or talk through like how your like, yeah, basically just what your thought process is going to be most helpful to your interviewer. And at that point, we should be able to like sort of hint you in the right direction. But yeah, yeah. So mostly just explaining your thought process, I think.
And so he has a follow-up. He says, what if we don't have any idea about how to solve it?
Yeah. So yeah, that's definitely a tricky spot to be in an interview. I think being able to, yeah, what I like to do in this case is like at least kind of go through any given test cases, or like come up with different test cases and really walk through them like out loud, step by step, like how would I do this, like not through code, but like like a really good life example, like how would I walk through this problem, how would I walk through solving this, and then be able to like break it out into like smaller pieces, and then like with your interviewer be able to like kind of talk through like exactly what you are stuck on with each piece. um, I think for the most part, walking through test cases is really the most helpful. It will like oftentimes I have interviews where people will be very stuck, and then I'll be able to like say, okay, let's walk through this test case, and then the wheels really start spinning for them, and they're like, oh, now how do I turn this like idea into code? And so I think most helpful is just going to be walking through tests. Yeah.
Cool, thank you. And then I do see a question here. Can we expect system designing questions during the interview at Figma, or is it only DS and outgoes? So our interview process has been shortened. I know last year we had 4 sections, and it did include that system designing component, but this year we have reduced it to 2 coding interviews, as well as the values interview as well. Cool. What What other questions are out there? Hopefully you all found this conversation helpful and got some great tips and takeaways for the upcoming season for sure. Any other questions about the process? Any other technical questions maybe that Langston can give some insight on?
Yeah, so I see someone asking for advice, what would help me the most. Um, I think for me, so I did a lot of interviewing in school. And I think what honestly helped was just like repetition. Um, I think starting out like with my first few interviews, obviously, like interviewing is like very different than anything else. I think it's a lot different than like schoolwork and things like that. So um, early on, I found it like tough to like work under time like that on like algorithms. And so I think what helped was like doing prep, whether that was through like things like leak code, but like also making sure I was timing myself because like all of these interviews are going to be time constrained. Um, or also like meeting with friends. I did a lot of practice interviews with them, which honestly was like it's kind of weirder to like be interviewed by your friends than like just some random person. So once I was like comfortable with that and like going through the actual interview process, it made like the actual interviews a lot less daunting. I think that was really helpful. Um, yeah, for the most part, I would just say repetition. Um, Definitely not trying to do enough leak code till where you're like memorizing questions. I think that's not like that. It's only so helpful. I think it's more important to like just get used to the actual interview process. Um, and then also within your interviews, I think the most important thing is just being like verbal. Um, I think if you're able to like kind of talk through what you're working on and what your thought process is, it really helps your interviewer and like they're more they're like more able to help you in the actual interview um, and like actually like guide you in a way that's not just like outright giving you um, like an answer essentially and like in a lot of ways seeing how you actually take that kind of like feedback and like hints within the interview um, is like we can get a lot of signal from that as well. Not necessarily that you can just like solve the problem outright without saying much. Which honestly, when people do that and they're like not communicative and like talking through the thought process, that's not necessarily viewed as a good thing if they can just solve the problem completely, but like can't explain what they're doing. Um, so those are the things I found most important and like helpful.
Just a quick question. While practicing on lead code or hacker rank, uh, for these particular roles for intern and new grad, so which level questions do you suggest like to practice on most? Like easy or medium one? Do you prefer to work on the medium one more?
Yeah, so I think yeah, trying to think back. Um, I think for the most part, like most intern to like new grad level questions, interview questions are going to be like easy to medium. Um, I I'm not sure like how. I mean, I'm not gonna like try and grade like all of the Figma questions or like all the interview questions I've ever done. I think for the most part, sticking to like easy or medium is going to be the most helpful to at least get you like kind of the basics. Um, and like a lot of our questions and like interview questions in general build upon themselves and so they keep growing in difficulty so for a lot of questions I know a lot of places they're kind of like it's not necessarily expected that you'll get through all parts of a question um, so at least being able to like get towards like the easy to like medium level is kind of what I know like a lot of companies look for, at least in intern slash new grad roles. Um, so I think it would be fine to kind of work through those types of problems. Say so dynamic programming. I not sure. I think it's pretty rare to get dynamic programming questions. I can't say for sure whether or not Figma does ask dynamic programming questions. Um, I think I mean I've done a lot of interviewing at like the intern and new grad level. I don't think I've ever gotten one. Um, so um, but maybe I think if you do want to like prep, I know there are like quite a few dynamic programming questions in leak code, and at least being like familiar with it is probably a good thing. Um, but I do know it's like quite rare to kind of get those types of questions.
All right, any last questions and then we can wrap up. Okay, well, I have a couple closing notes. Thank you, Isaac. Thank you, Langston, for your time today and all the information that you shared. I hope this was helpful for everyone. I get to announce the winner of today's session. So congratulations to Savar Jain. Yay! You are the winner of the session, and that means that your resume will be reviewed by one of our talent board members. We'll reach out in the next week with more information of what that looks like and next steps. But congratulations, that's really exciting. And I think all of you are winners because you got to hear from Figma today and learn a little bit more about their process. As just the final closing remarks is I look out for emails about registering for our next session, which is on Tuesday, July 19th, and it's Imposter Syndrome by Roblox. So make sure you sign up for that if you're interested. But thanks everyone for joining today's session. Thank you again to Figma, and we'll see you at the next one.